during like the free periods at school, like the teachers always said, make sure you study, make sure you study. And like, I pretty much, tried to do that as well. Like, I studied as much as I could, like I never had to. But I also like took, say, maybe 1 or 2 off a week, just to kind of relax, unwind, and kind of socialise a bit as well.
No, I definitely studied really hard during the study periods. And also like in maths class especially, I noticed most people would talk throughout maths class and then have to do the exercise at home, which is fine if that works for them, but I kind of, because we were allowed, I put my music on and just put my head down and just got the exercise done in class, and then I didn't have to do an extra hour's homework.
Well, honestly, our free periods, we probably could have used them a little bit better. But our library, like we had a new library this year and there were couches in the corner, and every free period we would run in and sit down and just relax. And in a way it was really good. It actually helped us because it got us that little break from school, just for that little 45 minutes or whatever. We were able to just chill out with our friends, and that was helpful.
Yeah, I try to sort of put it to use, sort of study periods, because I figure if I'm already at school, you might as well. Like, there's not really much else you could do. Like, I'd rather sort of have free time in the evening.
I think it's very important for certain people. It depends on the type of person. I know personally I prefer to work by myself independently, and you have to sort of make your own, you have to get your own method to how you're going to study by yourself, and I think it's unique for every person. So it is important so that you can find the perfect way for yourself to be able to study so that it's beneficial for you.
First week into year 11, I had not sort of touched my school diary, and my sister was like, "What are you doing? That school diary is what kept me on track in VCE."
Every day when I used to go home, first like I had a meal, sat back and relaxed for about, say, half an hour. Then I'm like, yep, all right, that's it. Went upstairs and to my room and kind of looked at all my homework, laid it out, like kind of organised it in priorities, and just like went to it, the highest priority first, and kind of worked along that. And I found that was like pretty effective.
And turns out, it's very useful. It's good to sort of plan out, what exactly you want to do, what exactly you have done, and it'll just let you keep track of yourself, and it's all about minimising stress.
Well, I've always sort of preferred to work by myself. I've worked better by myself, but once you get to year 11 and 12, you've got to really start using it and utilising it so that it can be beneficial to you. So you have to have a sort of method to how you're going to study. You can't just, and how you're going to learn in the classroom and stuff. You can't just out of nowhere use the same method, because as every year gets harder, you've got to adapt to the more difficult stages of high school.
I didn't really bother having a strict timetable, because our routine is always changing at school. You have this SAC on this day and that SAC on that day, and you have this assignment. My preferred way was just using lists, and every morning I get up, I put my list down and I cross off things, and in the afternoon I make another list, and so that's my goals, and I just cross off and prioritise that way and get things done. And I use a diary as well, so I've got, if an essay is due this day, I have a day where I want my draft finished and this finished and that finished. And so I had a plan according to tasks, but not plan according to subjects, I think.
Well, firstly, I found like the diary very effective for year 12. And like every day I go to school, check my diary, it'll tell me what subjects I had for the day, it'll show me the homework I had to do, and each day like I'd fill it out, and that way like when I got home I knew exactly what I had to do, the homework. I knew exactly what like other subjects were like tomorrow, so I could kind of organise it and prioritise my work effectively.
Things that helped me to be a bit more organised whilst I was studying was colour coding, definitely, different coloured papers or different coloured highlighters. That's something I used the library a lot for at school. They had heaps of different coloured papers, so if I had Indonesian or something, I'd get a whole bunch of blue paper and I'd do all my work on that. Or if I had a certain, if there were heaps of topics, I'd do different coloured papers for those topics.
I also had like a number of like kind of study timetables and plans and stuff, so each kind of like along the week I'd organise, like I'd highlight which like work is due like on what particular day, and I'd kind of set like a homework plan for that day, like do half an hour of this, do 20 minutes of that. That way like so across the whole week I'm not just doing like say maths one night, English another night. I could kind of spaced out to do bits each night.
if you're ambitious and you want to get ahead, you got to develop your independence and to be able to do things without the teacher, without everyone else doing it. And it's really important in uni, because in uni you're expected to do it. And year 12, I think a lot of the difference is if you're an independent learner, if you're the one who will go and find a different textbook to look at different questions, whereas everyone's happy with just doing what the class is doing. And so, yeah, it's always getting yourself a bit of an edge. I mean, I know with English, everyone will have a very general point of view, and for you to develop and generate an independent point of view and an original idea on a text is what gets you ahead of like the 10,000 other students who are taking that same paper.
Research is very important, especially internet. I think the internet this year has helped me so much. If it was just getting other, even if your teacher's teaching you a certain thing or your textbook says a certain thing, finding other people's opinions or more further information about certain topics, it's always going to help. I mean, the more information, the better. You don't want to overload it, but always finding, and a lot of people learn in different ways. I mean, I usually love to learn by just reading. A lot of people learn from pictures, and a lot of the time I'd go on the internet and there'd be interactive diagrams and things like that. Anything that can help, the internet's really good for, and things like online Encarta and all those kind of things, it helps.
Year 11, my international studies teacher back then, he showed us a video about Wag the Dog. Have you ever heard of it? Yeah, Wag the Dog. And that really helped us start thinking about sources and how people can fool you. And so from then on, I've always been very conscious about what I'm reading, who's writing, why they're writing, in order to figure out whether it's true or not. And so when you're researching, your internet is very important, but also who's writing what's been put up there is very important as well.
I leant more towards the internet. Again, the library I used a lot more for printing exams and always going into the silent study room and doing exams in there, but I never really used it as much I should have used it more, but I felt that, a lot of the time my friends sort of distracted me in the library, and I study better at home by myself.
Well, when I'm reading, I'm a scribbler, so if you look at any of my texts, it's got lots of scribbles all over the pages and tags and things like that. Because when you're reading, you're always thinking of ideas and you're interpreting things, and it's important to write it down then. A lot of people try to keep their books pretty, but you want to really use your books well.
I'm a real scribbler with reading. I'd write all over my textbooks. I'd highlight the textbook, and I'd sort of put a star next to a certain chunk, and then I'd summarise it in my own words on the side. Summarising was definitely something that I really took advantage of. I'd always read something, and even if I practically wrote the whole thing out again, even if it was in my own words, it helped me to understand it. A lot of the time I'd just read something, a whole page of things, and they'd have so many facts in there, and it would I'd read it and I wouldn't even be understanding what was on the page. So if you break things up and summarise as you go, that's the way that I found it to be beneficial to me. After finding that, I could write, say it was about something, about that topic, you'd write, say, 10 questions on that, and then you'd write the answers to them, and then I'd get my mum to test me or something.
I do like to immediately summarize my lecture notes straight sort of each day after the lectures. So I find that would make the learning very systematic, and it would make revision much easier as well. Well, I tend to summarize my notes at night.
I remember economics middle of the year had told me that she wrote about 60 pages of economics or something, and I said, geez, good on you, that's amazing. So I went and sort of did the same thing, and it did not help me at all. It didn't help me at all.
In terms of revision, it would be around a monthly basis, yep. And more sort of before the mid-semester tests, or maybe depending on the topic as well. If we finish a major area of topic, then I would tend to revise for the notes as well.
Okay, in terms of revision, I felt that you know, year 12 is so much information to take in, and not for one subject. I had 6 subjects to do in year 12, so I had to take in so much information. So every night I would sometimes come home and think, this is what I've done today in English or something, and I'd go over it and I'd read it and try and not memorize, but you know, try and make yourself, you know, really familiar with what you'd done that day and just keep up to date. And then at the end of the week, look over it again, and you have to be consistent. Consistency is definitely a key to success in year 12.
I waited towards the end. I was doing it probably the last month or 2. Yeah, but spacing it out, but towards the end, once I'd covered the theory, and I started timing in things. For my subject, so in physics or English or things, usually I had notes that I make throughout the year, so short notes that I summarize and I read and revised first. So I don't know, 2 months or something before exams, I went through all my revision for the whole year, and then I started doing practice papers. Practice papers depends, like for English I didn't have that many. I just sort of went through all the study guides and did all the questions on the back, and besides that I did brainstorms and things like that. Physics and things I did about 20-25 papers maybe. After a while it gets repetitive, so it was sort of just doing it to get in routine and make sure that I'm still like everything's still at the tip of your fingers, because one of the dangers is when you're preparing for a whole year, you go past your peak too early, and after a while you get fatigued and you're not thinking about your answers and you're just chucking it down, and then that's not very good.
For my I had a chemistry mid-year, so before that, since it was my only mid-year, I'd started quite early, trying to, after every topic, I'd do a few questions to see if I could get them, and then finally, once I finished the course, you could finally go through your whole exam and complete it. But then, as I got to the end of the year, because I had so many, it built up pretty suddenly. I didn't expect it. Year 12 was just going along, you know, smoothly, and then suddenly we looked in our diaries and we had 2 weeks or 3 weeks and we had exams. So straight away, sort of a month before, I'd definitely well underway starting practice exams. Chem, we got a booklet, really thick booklet of chemistry exams. I would have easily done about 40 for the first one, and for the second time round, I'd probably done about 50. Yeah, about 50 practice exams. Yeah. A lot of the time, I didn't use the time constraints. I thought I would just try and get through it at first, so that I know what I'm doing. And you definitely pick up that they repeat a lot of questions, and they sort of they do the same question but in different wording. So you start picking things like that up, and then you start your time constraints, and you start doing it under exam conditions, and you just build it up until I was, you know, until I got to the actual exam. About a week before, I was doing an exam with about 20 minutes to go. So it got so frustrating at some points at the beginning, because second semester chemistry, I felt like I didn't know anything. I don't know why, but I felt like I had to start studying again and looking over all of my notes. And yeah, I just felt that at the beginning I was taking like half an hour more than the actual time that's allowed, and I was taking a lot longer than I should have. So again, you have to work on that, just getting a bit quicker.
I found like the most important thing for the whole year is just to set a goal. Like by the study of 12, like I knew like I wanted to follow a path of engineering. I had all my subjects there, and like, you know what, that's the goal you want, and you got to work hard for it. So I set the goal, and like I was doing subjects that I loved, you know, like I'd go into physics and be like kind of, you know, excited. So I just love doing it, and like it helps when you actually like something. When like if you're doing something that you don't like, then you know you kind of like don't really want to do it, or like you don't perform as well. But if you're doing something that you love, something that you're interested and passionate about, then it really helps you strive for, you know, perfection. Trying like helps you go like really well, and yeah, I think that's like a key part of year 12.
In summary, when developing an action plan, 6 key research and study tips to keep in mind are: utilise your study period to best effect. Use your diary, your study timetable, and daily list to develop a strong sense of organisation. In order to achieve your personal best, be prepared to do extra research and reading. Read for a purpose. Revise each subject for at least 20 minutes each day. Practice exams take the anxiety out of the exam experience, and they're a great way to revise and continue learning.